Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining this introductory webinar for the Breakthrough Consortium for Olfactory Health, or BeCOH. My name is Valentina Parma, and I'm the co-chair of BeCOH. On behalf of the entire steering committee, I'm thrilled to have you join us as we launch this initiative dedicated to advancing olfactory health through research. Before we dive in, here are a few quick housekeeping notes to help everything run smoothly. So your microphone is muted during the presentation to avoid background noise, but we would like to interact with you. And so if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. I love seeing all the greetings messages from London, from New Zealand. Well, thank you. Time difference might be a bit tough. And please continue to input your questions during the presentations in the chat as well. We will address all of the questions at the end of the main presentation during our Q&A session. This webinar, as you might know by now, is being recorded, and we'll share the recording and takeaways afterwards. So while people are still trickling in, well, welcome from Toronto, from Alberta, Canada, even from Philadelphia. Appreciated that. So glad that everybody is chiming in. And so I'll give it like another 30 seconds from Brighton, Cleveland. Wow, we're really well represented, as well from Italy. Oh, that's great. That warms my heart in many ways. Oxford is joining, Ocean City, Montreal, Canada, and etc. So I'm going to stop reading, but love to see where people are joining from. And I'm going to focus on the agenda for today. So we're going to try to answer basically three questions, basic questions, and see how you can get involved with us. But first of all, we want to talk about the why this consortium has been created. What is its vision, its mission? Who are the people part of the founding steering committee? As well as the objectives and exactly what are we trying to do in a very concrete way. So without further ado, we're going to get started with the interesting meat of this conversation, and I will hand things over to our co-chair, Duncan Boak, who will share insights of why BeCOH was created and what is the experience of living with smell dysfunction. Go ahead, Duncan.
Thanks very much, Valentina. Hello, everybody. My name is Duncan Boak, and I'm the founder and chief executive of Fifth Sense, the UK charity for people affected by smell and taste disorders. I lost my sense of smell as a result of a head injury 20 years ago. In fact, we're just literally a few weeks past my 20th anniversary, so it's and my sense of smell's never returned, so it's quite a privilege to be involved in the establishment of this new research consortium. We're going to talk a little bit later about the goals of the consortium and what we're working towards, but I'm going to start just with a bit of an introduction to smell disorders. You know, the why we're here. And the challenges that we're facing. So, firstly, what do we mean by smell disorders? So, quickly run through them for you. So, firstly, anosmia, which I'm affected by, the inability to smell. Inability to detect odors. So the majority of people have acquired anosmia, so people who lose it at some point in their lives, whilst a smaller number of people, but no less important, have congenital anosmia, born without the sense of smell. Hyposmia describes a reduced ability to smell. And then we've got parosmia, which is a distorted sense of smell, where things smell different to how they should and often unpleasant, very common with smell loss as part of a virus, as we saw with COVID-19. Then we've got phantosmia, smell hallucinations, so perceiving an odor when there's nothing actually there. So I remember coming across speaking to somebody who just could smell garlic all the time without there being any garlic present. And then in terms of the numbers of people affected by olfactory disorders, quite significant. So potentially studies have shown, pre-COVID studies, that between 2 and 5% of the population may have anosmia. with up to as much as 22% of the general adult population having some degree of olfactory dysfunction. And the graph here illustrates how the prevalence increases with age. And it's significantly greater in older people due to natural loss of the sense of smell as part of the aging process, but also its prevalence with neurodegenerative diseases as well, such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. In terms of then the causes, this is a really interesting thing about smell dysfunction. It's the symptom or a symptom of lots and lots of different health issues. Over 129 as detailed there. And some of the main causes, chronic rhinosinusitis. We've got viral infections, so colds, flu, COVID-19, of course, head injuries, as in my case, and as I've said already, the aging process and neurodegenerative diseases. And smell disorders have a significant impact on people. Okay, it's really important that what people don't necessarily think about is the knock-on impact of the loss of smell. People often will say to me, well, you can't smell, you know, well, okay, what's the issue there? What people fail to take into account are the knock-on impacts of having a problem with the sense of smell. So poorer mental and physical health for a number of reasons. So people's food preferences can change. People don't enjoy eating as much anymore, and might eat more salty foods or sweeter foods, so leading to poorer diet and poorer nutrition. Impacts on people's social lives. People don't want to go out for dinner with friends and family or eat out in restaurants anymore because it's a bad reminder of what things used to be like. Impacts on relationships. People can't smell their partners anymore, smell their babies, their children. Safety vulnerabilities. I've had my own gas safety scare years ago when I nearly lit a naked flame in my kitchen, which was full of gas that I couldn't smell at the time. So, you know, we can't smell dangers. That makes us vulnerable. And then something that also comes up a lot as well is the real sense of, with people with acquired anosmia, particularly, a real sense of loss. And for some people, it's almost a bereavement, because smell is so closely tied up with so many emotional, pleasurable parts of our lives, that the removal of it, sudden removal of it, can have big psychological implications for people. And that's another driver for poorer mental health. And this is backed by some research that Fifth Sense did in partnership with Professor Carl Philpott back in 2014, where we sought to capture the quality of life impact of olfactory disorders on people in the UK. We sent out a survey to Fifth Sense members. 92% said their enjoyment of food and drink had been reduced, perhaps unsurprisingly. Large numbers of people said they feared exposure to dangers such as gas and smoke and spoiled food. Lots of people said they'd experienced depression and anxiety, 61%, significantly higher than national average in the UK for depression and anxiety. And also 54% said the relationship with family and friends had been affected. And there's an important point here about the isolation that many people experience. You know, not only are you cut off from lots of pleasurable things, but lots of other people, friends, family, partners, doctors, don't understand the impact that it has, which can lead to quite a lonely, isolating existence for people. And all these issues together, plus the lack of recognition and lack of care for smell taste disorders, leads to a lot of problems. We've got this lack of awareness and recognition from government agencies, the healthcare professionals, lack of specialist services for patients, not enough research into new treatments is being done. And a real problem is that the sense of smell isn't routinely tested like sight or hearing. So in terms of those stats we quoted before, you know, a lot of these are estimates and possibly underestimates as well. We don't really know how many people there are who are affected because there's not routine testing. And people as it says in the slide, people often are unaware that they've got a poor sense of smell, particularly if it declines over time because of the lack of testing. Now, my story, my own story, sort of helps exemplify some of this. So back in 2005, when I was 22, I tripped and fell down a flight of stairs, landed on the back of my head, and was in hospital for a week. And it was after I come out of hospital that I realised I couldn't smell anything. I went to see my doctor, family doctor, and he said, "Okay." I said, "Look, I've had this accident. I can't smell anything. You know, what's going on?" And he said, "Okay, I've heard this happening to people before. It's very rare. We don't know very much about it, and there's not really much we can do about it either. Give it time, give it 6 months to a year, and it might come back of its own accord. If it doesn't, you just have to live with it." And that was it. That was the extent of the information and support I got from my doctor. And I basically came away from that thinking, well, I've never heard of this happen to somebody before. My doctor can't tell me anything. I must be 1 in a million. And spent the next six and a half years thinking that. And it wasn't until reading about someone else's experience that I started to realize that there were lots and lots of other people like this. And that was ultimately the catalyst for me starting Fifth Sense. Knowing what I know now and looking back, what would I have liked to have happened? Well, what I would have liked is for my doctor to be able to go, "Okay, yeah, this is an issue, and it's a problem. We need to get you to a specialist." So I'd have liked a referral to a specialist smell clinic. I'd have liked to have my sense of smell tested to ascertain the degree of my smell loss. I'd have liked to have been given support and information to help me come to terms with my sensory loss, and ideally directed to a patient group, a charity, so I could connect with others with the same experience. And ideally, to be given some form of treatment which would help alleviate my symptoms. And ultimately, okay, I'm not alone in this, and I'm sure many of the others in a similar situation to me on the call today would want the same. And that's really why the consortium has been founded, to drive forward developments in the testing and treating of olfactory disorders. And so if we come on to the consortium itself, which is, think of it as an informal affiliation of a number of different organisations working in the field, coming together under a common purpose. So we've got Fifth Sense, patient organisation, we've got the Manel Centre, Stanford University, the National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders, Hersler Health, Rhino Therapeutics, and Curie Bio. And we've got representatives from nearly all of them here today, and they're all going to introduce themselves very shortly. At which point, I'm going to hand back over to Valentina, and she's going to talk a little bit more about the goals of the consortium and also the people on it.
Well, thank you, Duncan. Well, you heard Duncan's story and why he's here, and so now it's my turn to share why do I want to be part of BeCOH. And so I am a scientist by training, and I am really committed to driving research and fostering like some coordinated and global efforts to establish smell testing as a standard of care. So I'm particularly pleased today to see that people are joining from really many corners of the world to hear about what can we do together. So my goal for doing that, I want more people to be tested for their smell function. It's because I want to enhance individual well-being and also try to inform public health on a broader scale for what happens to people with smell dysfunction. And achieving this requires bridging laboratory advancements, some things that we're doing in the lab, like developing and validating new smell tests that are more prone to be used in a public health context. But also we need a real world implementation strategies to translate what we learn in the lab to the real world and to get to clinicians and patients that are actually connecting at that level. And as part of BeCOH, I'm really eager to collaborate with experts across all the disciplines that we mentioned to accelerate these efforts. We're all bringing like different strengths to this consortium, and we all want together to support people that are affected by smell dysfunction in receiving the recognition, the support, and the care that is needed. So thank you to those that are mentioning what happened to them in the chat. And, we are a research consortium in this point, but we're trying to ground our efforts on the experiences of people that are living with smell dysfunction. And unfortunately, two of our clinician scientists are not here today because of clinical duties. So they asked us to kindly introduce them. And so I want to present Dr. Zara Patel, who's professor of otolaryngology and director of endoscopic skull-based surgery and the Stanford Smell Disorders Clinic at Stanford University School of Medicine. And she is joining the steering committee of BeCOH to advance the diagnosis and treatment of smell disorders. And she recalled that when she began her practice 15 years ago, there were really no effective treatments for the majority of patients with smell disorders that didn't have sinusitis. And she was very frustrated about that as a doctor. And so she decided to dedicate her career in clinical and research to fill this gap. And so through her work, as well as the work of others today, clinicians are able to help, let's say, 50% of patients with smell dysfunction, which is a significant improvement, but we're not at the place that Zara would like to see things. So this is not far enough. And so by committing to participating in BeCOH, Dr. Patel really would like to accelerate progress in olfactory health research, expanding treatment options, and ensuring that all patients suffering from smell dysfunction have access to effective care. And the story of Dr. Joshua Levy is not very different. He is currently the clinical director at the National Institutes on Deafness and Communication Disorders, which is one of the founders of Smell and Taste Research in the US. And he is also the co-director of the newly funded Smell and Taste Center at the NIH. And he is joining BeCOH to help drive progress on olfactory health as an indicator of brain health, as well as an indicator of reduced quality of life for millions of people. And so many are the people that live with smell dysfunction without proper screening or treatment. And so Dr. Levy is committed to advancing patient-centered care and research through the consortium. He strongly supports this impactful community working in partnership to improve diagnostic tools, expand access to care, and enhance outcomes for those affected by smell disorders. So you start hearing, a red line here of what is the reason that are motivating us. And so moving from research maybe more to the commercial aspects, I lend the stage to Patricia Lukashner for her perspective.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm the CEO of Ahersla Health. We market and manufacture the Sentinel Smell Test, which is a rapid and affordable screening test, which we got because of the research expertise of Monell, answering the call at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic to identify people with smell loss. I'm also the founder of the Olfaction and Gustation industry group, which we're keenly aware of the challenges faced by our burgeoning industry. And so those of us as industry stakeholders understand that it's acknowledging smell loss as a critical step to actually helping people on their journey to better health after experiencing smell loss. And now more than ever, I'm sure you can all appreciate that it's important to demonstrate how a diagnosis of smell dysfunction is beneficial to patients as well as to health economics. So the missions of Ahersla Health and BeCOH are very well aligned. But I'd like to tell you that I'm really engaged with this group because of the inspiration and the rewarding work that we're doing as a collaborative, a unique collaborative from very different areas within the same interest, with the drive to change, to make changes that together we know that we will make important advances in that connection between smell and health. So I'm happy to be here, and I hope many of you join the consortium as well.
Andy, on to you.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's fantastic to see such strong support for this webinar, and the event's very timely, coming on the eve of World Anosmia Day. So I'm Andy Mulvaney. I'm co-founder and CEO of Rhino Therapeutics. I'm PhD trained in chemistry and bring a 22-year plus track record in private and public biotech as an entrepreneur and company builder. And so throughout my career, I've sought to apply my scientific training to translate scientific breakthroughs into transformative therapies for patients where no effective treatment options exist. And that's predominantly been in the rare disease space, and now I'm focused in the smell loss space. And as we develop a more sophisticated understanding of the importance of olfactory health in maintaining overall health span, and increasingly recognize age-related olfactory loss or presbyosmia as a modifiable risk factor for the comorbidities of aging, Rhino Therapeutics was founded to pioneer regenerative medicines to repair the olfactory neuroepithelium and to restore olfactory function, and thereby support healthy aging in presbyosmic patients. And Rhino has partnered with Curie Bio to deliver on this mission, and you'll hear from my colleague Lisa after me. So Rhino is a proud founder member of BeCOH, and as a community, we face common regulatory and commercial headwinds to drive diagnosis, approval, access and reimbursement to novel diagnostics and therapeutics. But I believe through this cross-sector consortium, we have the opportunity to use our unified voice and our concerted efforts to address these headwinds and ultimately drive improvement in outcomes for people living with chronic smell loss. So thanks very much, and I'll pass over to Lisa.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andy. Really nice to see everyone here. Thank you for joining. So I represent Curie Bio. We're a VC firm that provides funding and hands-on support to help founders bring therapeutic ideas to clinical proof of concept. We've invested in 25 therapeutic companies today, with Rhino being one, of course, dedicated to the treatment of smell loss. I'm a PhD scientist by training. I have been a biotech investor, company creator, operator for the last 15 years, was part of the effort shaping 40 different companies and have hands-on experience fundraising for more than 10 in both private and public market. I can tell you, investors are risk averse, unfortunately, when it comes to market opportunity and commercial. Duncan nicely articulated all the gaps in patient care. We need to now turn that into quantitative health economic numbers, like dollar signs, to unlock funding into the space so that more diagnostic and therapeutic company can be created, which is what we want. So this type of work, it's very hard for one single company or person to take on, but it's foundational, right, to expanding the entire field. So I'm super excited to see this group coming together and look forward to sharing the first year research focus with you guys later in this webinar.
Hi, I'm Nancy Rawson. Thank you everybody for joining us. I'm here from the Monell Center in Philadelphia, which is a nonprofit research center entirely focused on taste and smell and nutrition. I am probably the longest in terms of research in this field. It was over 30 years ago. I first heard a story from a woman who had lost her sense of smell, who had been a chef. And the impact of her story on me, I think the piece that hit me the most was that she reported feeling cut off from the world, in addition to the effects on her career, of course. Since that time, I've worked in research and in administration and fundraising. We've learned so much. We've made so many discoveries. But by listening to patients, both through the work that Duncan mentioned, as well as a project that we did with the Smell and Taste Association of North America and with Jefferson, it's very clear that the discoveries and translation of these into commercializable treatments is being slowed because of gaps in our knowledge, such as those that Lisa mentioned regarding the economic impacts. And these kinds of gaps can really only be filled by collaboration across sectors to drive the work that's needed. And so that's why I'm here. This consortium is really the core of that cross-sector effort. And I'm really excited to be using my experience and my role at the Monell Center to support this effort.
Wonderful. And so now on to what is our ambition at BeCOH and what is our vision? So we're really preparing the groundwork to making universal prevention, detection, and effective treatment of olfactory dysfunction a reality. And we want to do so with a strong commitment to drive the research that is necessary to transform innovation in smell dysfunction diagnosis and treatment into commercially viable and accessible technologies. And by advances this type of solution from bench to bedside, we aim to improve the lives of those affected by smell dysfunction. And so you heard the work of this steering committee so far and the thinking, and it's quite a few months that we have been talking about what are our the topic that really are core to our pursuit. And so in this first year, we have started working on at least the three major goals. So first was to ensure that new diagnostic and therapeutic advancements and the research that we are promoting are not just scientifically rigorous, but they're also aligned with the real world needs of individuals living with smell dysfunction. And by centering the patient experience, we would like to drive innovation that leads to better detection, treatment, and management of olfactory disorders. And second, we really realize by talking to each other for our different perspectives that there are lack of consensus. And when we use even the same terms, we might not be meaning the same thing. We don't have a unified way of reporting like the results of smell testing in a standard way. We don't have screening standards for different clinical populations. We don't even know how to evaluate across the different diagnoses, the clinical outcomes. So we have a lot of developments done for research purposes or for extensive research that have a hard time being scaled up to a population level type of endeavor. And so here we would like to really facilitate discussion, cross-sector discussion, and even consensus building statements on reporting standards, on screening and clinical outcome endpoints. And also we want to address the invisible socioeconomic burden of smell dysfunction, which is still very poorly quantified. A concrete example of our commitment to this consensus efforts is that BeCOH is engaging, it is supporting the consensus meeting statement that is going to happen at the upcoming meeting of the Association for Chemoreception Sciences in Florida in April. And we will share more about this in updates in the BeCOH newsletter that you will hear more about in the next slides. And last but not least, we're really laying the groundwork to connect with regulatory agencies and policymakers because all of the research insights that this cross-sectional group can leverage will then be easily translated in a format that these agencies could understand and implement as fast as possible. And now I'm going to turn it to Lisa to present one example of the research efforts that we want to engage in.
Fantastic. So as I highlighted previously, we understand through all the patient survey that there's significant gaps in patient care. But how do we turn that into a quantitative health economic dollar sign argument so that we can convince insurance company, convince investor to really put funding into this space so that more diagnostic and therapeutic company can be created. So this study is what we intend to do in year one as part of this consortium. What we're trying to leverage here is cutting edge real world evidence. What that means is basically these days we're able to access anonymous data that documents patient journey up to 80% of the US population. So this is unprecedented, right? In terms of the scale, this would be the largest study ever done today. So we can basically have a very representative data set to the entire nation to be basically able to see what patients are going through and quantify the economic associated with not having the optimal patient care. So you can see it breaks down into 4 different objectives. First, we just wanted to understand the patient journey, right? Where are they stuck? Why are they not getting properly diagnosed? Why are they not getting properly treated? We, of course, wanted to understand the short-term and long-term morbidity, right? What is the health impact of people who are unfortunately suffering from smell loss? If we look across different providers and different patient journeys, can we identify best practices that lead to better outcome? That would be the third objective. Of course, tying everything together now to really articulate from an economic perspective, what is the advantage and how are we saving money for the healthcare system if patients are now properly diagnosed and treated. So this is really our key goal here, and we'll go through 2 examples to illustrate the potential impact. But before that, maybe I'll point to Andy, since you're working in the therapeutic space, just to speak a couple words on how this research in your mind could impact your work as well.
Sure, thank you, Lisa. So I guess, as a CEO of a therapeutics company, I would characterize a lot of my time and thoughts around, how do we raise money to fund our efforts and develop therapeutics? And of course, that means we have to interface with investors like Curie Bio and other venture investors. And thinking back to the days before we founded Rhino, with a sort of blank sheet of paper, there were 2 sort of major questions which we realized we had to be able to answer very early on in order to be able to raise the amounts of capital to bring a therapy through discovery, development, and ultimately to the market. And those are, developing a therapeutic in a new field where there are no approved therapies. What are the registration endpoints? How do we build the evidence clinically that's going to allow the regulatory authorities to approve a new therapeutic? And are the current endpoints that are used going to be fit for purpose for testing in the patient population that we're seeking to serve? And ultimately, it then drives the point, once you've got a drug approved, who pays for it? So it's then about building the evidence to support the access and reimbursement of a therapeutic, so patients get access to the therapy and that product can be reimbursed. So it's thinking about what additional evidence do we need to generate to support the budget impact, the budget offsets for treatment of a patient with smell loss, and ultimately, why should a payer care and pay for that new therapeutic? So these, this type of research is going to be hugely impactful in terms of helping us to articulate the value proposition of treating smell loss, and hopefully, rising tide will raise all boats will help to raise investment into the field, and other therapeutic and diagnostic companies can benefit from the work that we do, that we're going to publish and put into the public domain, so all stakeholders can benefit from the work we do in the consortium.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah, with the size of the population that is impacted with smell loss, like I would say compared to other fields that I've been working at in the past, we don't have a lot of therapeutic and diagnostic companies. So this work, our intention is to unlock that effort. If we can convince investor, convince insurance company that this is causing them money, right? Then hopefully they're more willing to fund efforts in developing therapeutic and diagnostic company. So going to a next slide as one of the example, thank you. So here, this is an illustrative example to show you what the data analysis could tell us, right? When we analyze millions of patients across the entire United States that are affected by smell loss, how can we learn from that data set? So on the top, you can see here, it's an example of a patient that has CRS with nasal polyp, which is an indication that that results in smell loss due to underlying inflammation. And so even though, of course, we know that is what the patient have, but as you can see in the beginning, they have this unspecific symptom weight loss because they can no longer smell, and so they're not really eating properly, and that unspecific symptom get presented to PCP. Unfortunately, there's not enough awareness, and so he or she did not get properly diagnosed. Fast forward, you can see, unfortunately, this person got into ER because of carbon monoxide poisoning, again, because they can't smell natural gas leak. The journey continues, unfortunately, going through more PCP visit, thinking that it's an allergy, and so really not addressing the treatable underlying condition. So finally, towards the end of this journey, you can see they were able to get in touch with an ENT specialist, they got the proper diagnosis, and then finally on the journey to treating the underlying condition that is causing their smell loss and all the seemingly independent issues that is presented in the beginning. So this is one example where we've heard from different patient experience, but if you move to the next slide, this can be significantly accelerated, right? We envision a world, and I think this might be happening already, and we can discover in this really large data set whether or not there are early diagnosis of smell loss, and that allow us to have a timely diagnosis and treatment of the underlying condition. And so now early treatment, or better clinical outcome, improve patient care, right? At the same time, you can see because all these red events are no longer occurring, and so that also reduced the healthcare expenses. So this is the kind of example that we want to discover in the real world data to be able to articulate, right, the economic benefit associated with better treatment and diagnosis. So on the next slide, we have one additional example from the Parkinson's space. You can see very similar situation. Smell loss is an early biomarker of Parkinson's, and 90+% of Parkinson patients, even before their motor symptom occurs, they will have smell loss. And so we should be using that information in the differential diagnosis process. What we really want to investigate is that happening in real world? And so with this data set, we'll be able to find out the situation and make that economic argument of how we can save everyone time and improve patient care while reducing healthcare expenses. So before I leave this section, maybe Patricia, if you want to jump in here to talk about how this could impact your work as a diagnostic company.
Yeah, so from a diagnostic company's perspective, having the information like best practices to help develop guidelines. So you have receptive healthcare providers understanding why they should be and understanding the utility of doing smell testing makes a big difference. But it also makes a difference in FDA approval processes where there's real world data supporting the efforts that are going on. And the vision to see how this will actually improve patient health. And then there's also a tremendous amount of information for reimbursement, as you've mentioned. So all of these things together make a big difference to industry because the doors aren't open if a healthcare provider doesn't know what to do with a diagnostic. We're very sensitive to waste in the healthcare system. And we don't want to add in new tests. We're very sensitive to the limited amount of time that we all have as professionals. And so it's very important to have clear guidelines, have a path to reimbursement. And of course, on the front end of all of this, from an industry perspective, to have a secure path through the FDA to get approval because it's a huge investment for us to come up with uses and new diagnostic tools for smell loss.
Fantastic. Yeah, this should be a win-win situation, right? Where we can save the healthcare, we can, by analyzing these data set, we can come up with a argument why doing good will actually save costs as well.
Can I just jump in here for a sec? I wanted to address one of the questions actually, which relates to the development of devices for detection of odors in the environment. And while there are, CO detectors and gas detectors, the technology for detecting, other kinds of olfactory hazards or unpleasant odors is really still in its early stages and still very expensive. There is some research being done in that direction, but the work that we're proposing here to really document the dimensions of the problem and the economic impact will also help to push funds towards the advancement of those types of devices as well. So I think that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
I think also, Lisa, if I can just make a comment as well, just looking at building on what you've been talking about, but looking at it from the patient perspective, okay, that what you're talking about, it has benefits for us as well, because you know the lack of diagnosis, the lack of a swift referral to specialist care, potentially for lots of people, repeated attempts to interact with the health system to try and get a diagnosis and treatment, sometimes being prescribed things, nasal sprays, for example, that have no effect. It has lots and lots of benefits. Streamlining the process has lots of benefits to patients as well on our quality of life, getting a faster resolution, but also costs to ourselves as well.
Completely agree. I think what we want to articulate is this is not an isolated patient experience, right? If we look into millions of patients and we see this being a reoccurring pattern, right? All these steps limiting them from getting the ultimate treatment, then we can make a stronger voice to change clinical practice, to change regulatory guideline, etc., and ultimately impact how insurance reimburse these products as well.
Thank you, everyone. And I'm going to chime in a little bit with also a research perspective here, but this type of study is going to help us quantify with much more precision who are the people that have smell dysfunction, where are they, and to help them through the process, which is something that currently is quite underestimated, as Duncan mentioned at the beginning. And so as you might have seen from all of this discussion, like the 2025 research agenda for BeCOH is really designed to advance the field of olfactory health by addressing a critical gap in diagnosis and treatment and healthcare integration. And this health work will really generate high impact data that supports clinical adoption, policy changes, as well as investment in new technologies. We've currently done the groundwork to get access to specialized tools and data sets that will allow us to cover like a vast majority of the US. And we do have the analytical expertise needed to execute this research effectively. So the infrastructure and the expertise is in place, and funding is the key enabler to moving this forward. We're looking at the budget that currently is around $500,000. And this is a baseline finding to secure licenses to critical data sets and cover the expert analysis needed to extract any actionable insights. Current funding, we have good prospects from six-figure soft commitments from different organizations, and this is a good sign of early demonstrated support. And any additional funding will really accelerate progress as well as expand the scale of research. And as you've heard, we're quite ambitious on what we want to achieve here. And then the question might be, after having heard all of this, like, what can you do at this point? And there are many ways to connect with us. Here you have QR codes to our LinkedIn account, where we'll regularly post updates on our progress, as well as questions on ongoing research studies and our next thoughts. You can contact us through our website as well as through email. And so in particular, if you're a researcher, a clinician, you're part of a foundation that is interested in smell dysfunction, or you are a commercial organization that is interested in finding out more about the work of the consortium, please just get in touch. We would like to connect with you and see whether we can find ways to partner on this. For everybody, and to keep abreast of the work that we intend to do, please join our newsletter. You can find here our contact email where you can express your interest in it. And this is the place where we're gonna connect with everybody and trying to mention what's top of mind for the consortium at the moment. And we're going to organize over the year more webinars where more interaction will be possible. So apologies for us talking a lot at this point, but as the introductory webinar, we wanted to get you an idea of why we're here, who we are, what we plan on doing. And so we took a lot of the speaking time. but this is your time to shine. I saw that the chat was quite active in different direction, and so I'm going to leave it to Duncan to steer our conversation into the Q&A section at this point. If you have more questions, put them in the chat.
Yeah, thanks, Valentina. So yes, any questions anyone has, then please do for panel members, consortium members, then please put them in the chat. I'm just having a look in the Q&As, and Nicole Bird, I'll start with yours. So you're saying congenital anosmia, learn to adapt by relying on others to smell for you. Partner starting to lose smell now due to aging. So you're wondering, any research in electronic noses of technology available in the US? There are electronic noses in existence that are often used for commercial research purposes, but nothing yet that's been developed is almost like a sort of a surrogate nose for those of us who can't smell. I don't know if any of my colleagues want to pick up on that, Valentina or Nancy.
Yeah, I did mention there is a lot of research going on artificial noses. They're used in industrial settings. They're generally tuned to specific chemicals, and they're generally quite expensive. So the prospect of sort of a more portable home use electronic nose that is more widely sensitive is on the horizon, but it's farther out than we would like.
Thanks, Nancy. And just to add as well, there is also a group of clinicians, researchers that has been formed fairly recently that is starting to look into the possibility of olfactory implants. So the idea that you could have something implanted into into the brain, which could almost sort of bypass any defunct olfactory system like mine, and hopefully that at some point we will have that things like that will be available, but a long way to go yet on that. Any research on Sampson's triad being done? I'm not aware of any studies around that at the moment. I don't know if anyone likes to comment on that. Okay, I think someone from Manel is going to answer that question. Am I right, looking at the notes that's appeared?
Yeah, not
Okay.
at the moment. There are a couple of questions that are coming in the chat, and there was one that there are two of interest, if I may, Duncan.
Please.
One is the presentation. Will the presentation be available? So this webinar is recorded, and we can make some of the slides available as well. But you will have access to the whole webinar recording for those registered. And for those who didn't register but would like to attend, please let them connect with the consortium email, and we can share the materials with them. And then there are a couple of questions. So we mentioned a lot the US, and so in this presentation, and there are international scholars as well as clinicians among us. And so how can we connect with those that are outside of the US? So we think that the insights that we can get from this first study in the US are going to be wildly applicable to others, although maybe the payers and the insurance part, it's going to be more specific to the US per se. We can find ways to duplicate efforts across the different healthcare systems as a core and the most important part, and the quantification of the economic and health outcome benefits will be likely similar across systems. So if you are interested, we're very happy to discuss how to expand this further. And an easy way that maybe it's going to be part of other conversations is thinking about how we can effectively share even the data that we already have. I feel like we're all sitting, at least all of us who are working with smell testing are sitting on a lot of test data that are currently just, focal to our own institution and organizations. And de-identified data might be shared, and the insights that we can gain from people that have been tested longitudinally, for instance, and with high quality measures of testing are highly informative. And so there are ways that we can collaborate better on how to merge these data efforts together. But Lisa, it seemed like you wanted to add something to this, if I interpreted right. You're unmuting.
No, I just want to echo what you just said. I think we're starting here in the US because that's where the big data is available. But I think the learnings, as you nicely articulated, would be applicable to other geographic location as well. And I think historically, like even for regulatory conversation, this data set could be leveraged for multiple locations as well.
Yeah, and thanks, Lisa. And just to add to that, you know, it's a really important point, this, because, you know, we're all not, you know, I'm obviously in the UK, and many of the colleagues here are based in the US. This is very much a global problem, and there is you know, a lack of infrastructure, if you like, for this issue, you know, not just in the US, not just in the UK, but in many other countries as well. There needs to be more research, more specialist clinics, more treatments available, smell testing to be introduced right across the globe. So yes, it's very much a problem, very much an international problem. And because of the sort of pockets of activity and specialisms we have in different parts of the world, it's really important that we work together on a global basis to tackle this problem. Nancy.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Stana and the other groups will be having a stakeholder workshop. I can put the link into the chat, because I think they also will be addressing some different kinds of questions and providing different kinds of information for the patient population.
Thanks, Nancy. That's great. And actually, just it's worth making a point as well, because I know there's obviously a lot of people on the webinar today who themselves have got smell taste impairment. The consortium has been established very much to sort of drive developments in research leading to developments of new therapeutics and olfactory testing. You know, we're not here to replace the work that's being done by organizations like the one that I lead, Fifth Sense, and also by Stana. Anyone here on the call who's wanting more support or information on their own specific situation, please get in touch with us. If you're in the UK, please contact Fifth Sense. If you're in the US, go to Stana. If you're outside of those countries, then by all means, you're welcome to contact Fifth Sense, and we'll do our best to help. And we'll pop the contact details in the chat as well.
Yes, we're getting more comments from congenital anosmics, and I would say that certainly is the most challenging of the types of anosmia that to address. But in the same way that we have seen children be treated who were blind, who now have some degree of vision, that were congenitally blind from birth, I think that in the future, even congenital anosmia will be able to be addressed.
And thanks, Nancy. And there's another really strong case there for smell testing, okay? Because at the moment, people with congenital anosmia tend to have to work it out for themselves, them or you know, when they're children, their parents, which is terrible, really. We're in this situation where it's not even, you know, children have to just figure it out for themselves. Pick up on a couple of questions that have gone in the Q&A box. Anne Clark, I'd like to understand what causes the smell loss as part of a traumatic brain injury. Really good point, Anne. I'd like to know the same. There's one of the challenges is at the moment that with the imaging technology that we've got, it's simply not possible necessarily to see in any level of detail exactly what you know, what the damage to the olfactory system is that's causing the loss of smell. So there's a need for more advances to be made on that front. Beverly, you lost your sense of smell 38 years ago due to a head injury. And every once in a while you can smell things, but mostly not. but you're saying you can taste food even better, or at least as well as before. Is it possible to lose the sense of smell but not the sense of taste? Yes, absolutely. So I've still got a sense of taste. So I'll tell you what, would one of my scientific colleagues like to pick this up and talk about the difference between the cranial nerves? Go on, Valentina.
Sure. So yeah, smell and taste are often confounded when we talk about it, but the systems are quite different. And so there's the cranial nerve that is the olfactory one that mediates our perception of smell from like orthonasally as well as retronasally, meaning that when you chew food, there are molecules that go towards the olfactory epithelium from the back of your throat up. And so if your sense of smell doesn't work, so the olfactory epithelium is damaged in one way, shape, or form with head injury, oftentimes the connection from the olfactory epithelium to the brain are not working as properly. And so the information might be unreliable, as you say, that sometimes you can smell and sometimes you cannot, but mostly you can't. But your taste buds, which are connected to a different cranial nerve are actually working. And so taste might be more like you can experience sweet or sour or bitter or salty, savory, like this broad experiences, but perhaps have a harder time distinguishing whether it is sweet like a strawberry or sweet like a peach. Fortunately, when we talk about flavor, we actually have like a vision as well as chemesthesis, which is the irritation in the nose and in the mouth that can help us fill in with this like experience of food. And so oftentimes when we're talking about the flavor of foods, it's not just smell, it's not just taste, there's so much more of that can contribute to it. So it is possible that these two senses are separate. It's hardly reflected in the way we talk about these senses.
Yes, and there's yet another sense called the common chemical sense or chemical irritation, which is carried by a different nerve. And I see a comment by Ainsley Font about her daughter detecting mint and menthol. And these are two chemicals that act on it's called the trigeminal nerve that also detects cold temperature and hot temperature. And that's why menthol feels cooling. And capsaicin is another chemical, hot pepper, that acts on that nerve, which is often generally remains intact when people lose their sense of smell. And so it can also be another way to help enhance the experience of flavor in foods by adding some of these what we call chemical irritants, or these chemically active substances like hot pepper or menthol or minty kinds of things.
So I feel like there are many questions, and thank you for all of you for sharing your experiences and your observations. And we won't have the time, unfortunately, to get to each and every session. Please, if you are a person living with smell dysfunction, we'll try to collate all of the links of events that are happening tomorrow for Anosmia Awareness Day, where more discussions will happen on this topic. And for the rest of us, unless there are closing thoughts from the other panelists and BeCOH member, Duncan, you have a thought, you're raising your finger, so please go ahead.
I would just like to say a big thank you to everyone who has themselves affected by smell taste disorder, who's come along today and has shared their experiences and challenges, either in the questions or in the chats, because what this helps is demonstrate the need for the work we're doing. The webinar's recorded, we're going to be sharing it, and what we're hoping to do through that is generate more interest in the work we're doing here, and hopefully start to generate more support and interest in funding to support the research that's going on. So I think there's a point here about, your voices will help make that happen and amplify the importance of this. So thank you very much indeed.
Absolutely. And to tap into one of the questions, we don't have a specific date for the next webinar of the BeCOH Consortium, but we will join our newsletter and you will be informed on when this will happen next. In the meantime, thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you to all of those who joined. Thank you to those who are going to watch the recording. And we look forward to connecting with you further and bring forward our revolution in a way of olfactory health. So thank you, everybody.